My daughter-in-law said her mother would be staying in my room just for a few days. She sent me to the guest room like I was a visitor in my own house. I didn't say anything, but that same week, the new owner of the house arrived, and it wasn't her. When my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, told me her mother would be taking my room, she did it with that smile I knew all too well. "It'll just be a few days, Stella. My mum needs to rest, and that room has better ventilation." I stood in the hallway of my house, the house I built by selling baked goods at the local farmers' market for 30 years, and I felt the words get stuck in my throat like sharp stones. My son, Ryan, was standing behind her, staring at the floor, the tiled floor that his father and I had laid with our own hands, counting every penny, every sacrifice. He didn't say a word, not one word in my defense, and that hurt more than anything else. "The guest room is clean," Vanessa continued, already walking toward my room with her mother's suitcases. "You'll be comfortable there, won't you? It's just temporary." That word echoed in my ears as I watched her enter the space where the photo of my late Arthur still hung, where I kept his watch on the nightstand, where I talked to him every night before I went to sleep. That night, lying on a thin mattress that smelled of dampness and bleach, with the sound of the pipes above my head and a window that looked out on the empty backyard, I understood something that chilled me to the bone. I was no longer the owner of my own life. They had turned me into an inconvenient guest, a wrinkly nuisance. But what they didn't know, what no one imagined as I stared at that peeling wall in the darkness, was that something inside of me had just awakened, something that had been asleep for far too long. And when a woman like me wakes up after 67 years of putting up with things, of keeping quiet, of being the good one, things are about to change in ways no one can predict, because that same week someone would knock on the door, and it wouldn't be who they were expecting. If this story has already touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel so you can keep following me on this journey, because what's coming is something even I didn't see coming. I need you to understand something before we go on. That house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the dream that Arthur and I wove together on sleepless nights, on freezing cold mornings getting the dough ready for baked goods, on afternoons under the sun selling on the city streets. When we got married, we lived in a borrowed room in the attic of my mother-in-law's house, a space so small that when it rained we had to put buckets in 3 corners. Arthur worked as a construction worker from Monday to Sunday. I sold whatever I could. He would come home with his hands torn up, full of calluses and cuts, but always with that tired smile that told me, "One day, Stella, one day we'll have our own place." It took us 28 years of saving every last coin in an old coffee can hidden under the bed. Every extra dollar went toward the plot of land we found in a working-class neighborhood on the south side, a dusty piece of dirt that no one wanted, but for us, it was the promised paradise. I remember the day we laid the first row of bricks. Arthur was sweating. I was handing him the mortar. Ryan was only 5 years old and was playing with pieces of brick, building his own little houses. "Look at my boy," his dad would say. "This is yours. One day this house will be yours. But first, it will be our refuge. Your mum and I are going to grow old here together." We built it little by little, one room, then another. We finished the bathroom 2 years later. The living room was the last luxury we allowed ourselves. I chose every single floor tile, walking through the home improvement store, looking for the prettiest ones that would fit in our budget of $800 a month. When we finally laid the last roof tile, we cried, hugging each other in the middle of what was now our living room. "We did it, honey," Arthur whispered to me, his voice cracking. "No one is going to take us out of here. This is our place in the world." 5 years ago, Arthur passed away. A heart attack while he was fixing a leak in the roof. He died doing what he always did, taking care of our house. Ryan hugged me at the funeral and promised me with tears falling on my shoulder, "Mum, you will never be alone. This house is yours. I'm going to take care of you just like Dad would have wanted." I believed him. With all my heart, I believed him. But then Vanessa came along 3 years ago, pretty, with that city girl accent who studied marketing, who knew how to say all the right things at the right time. At first, she would bring me flowers, help me in the kitchen, and call me honey. I thought it was a blessing that Ryan had found someone good. How foolish I was. Little by little, everything changed. She started to suggest things. "Oh, honey, don't you think that sofa is a little old? Ryan and I saw a beautiful one at Macy's." And the sofa that Arthur bought with his Christmas bonus disappeared, replaced by a white one that I was forbidden to use in my everyday clothes. Then it was the kitchen. "We need to renovate, honey. This looks like it's from the 1980s. And the tiles that I had chosen so carefully were covered up by grey ceramic that looked like a hospital. Each change was a piece of my history being erased. Every improvement was a way of telling me, your time has passed. Ryan became a different person. He didn't talk to me anymore. He came home late, left early. When I would try to talk to him, Vanessa would appear with some emergency, some excuse. She had wrapped him up so perfectly that my son no longer saw me. I was just the old shadow getting in the way of the family photos. And now, with the arrival of Mrs. Selina, Vanessa's mother, everything exploded. Two queens can't fit on the same throne, and they had already decided who was the extra one. But what they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that this house had secrets. Papers that Arthur signed before he died, clauses he protected thinking of me. And I was about to remind them of something they had forgotten. The roots of this house were watered with my sweat, and roots don't get pulled up easily. Mrs. Selina arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with 4 suitcases and the attitude of an owner. She didn't bring a travel bag. She brought the big suitcases, the ones with wheels that make a noise dragging across the floor, a noise that signals, "I've come to stay." She was a tall woman, one of those who wear sunglasses inside the house and speak with a tone that always sounds like an order. She didn't even say hello when she came in. She just looked around with that expression of someone evaluating if something is worth it or not. And she said, "Oh, honey, you're right. This needs a lot of changes." Vanessa smiled like a little girl who had just won a prize. "I told you, Mum, but you'll see we'll fix it up little by little." Fix it up? This wasn't broken. This was my home. Ryan was carrying the suitcases behind them like a silent porter. He walked right past me without looking at me. I was standing at the kitchen entrance, the dish towel still in my hands, feeling myself turn invisible. "Stella," Vanessa called me with that sweet, poisoned tone that I had come to recognize, "we need you to vacate the master bedroom. My mom has circulation problems, and that room has better ventilation. You'll be comfortable in the guest room, right? It's just while she recovers. Recovers. Recovers from what?" She never said. Mrs. Selina looked healthier than I did. "What about my things?" That was all I could say, in a whisper that even I was ashamed of. "Don't worry. I'll help you move them," Vanessa replied, already walking toward my room. "Ryan, help me with this." In less than an hour, my entire life was in 3 cardboard boxes piled up in the guest room. The photo of Arthur, my dresses, the rosary my mother gave me before she died. Everything was lumped together like second-hand goods at a flea market. That first night in that narrow room, with the smell of soap and dampness, I heard laughter coming from what used to be my bedroom. Mrs. Selina and Vanessa were talking like 2 queens planning their kingdom. And I was there, lying on a mattress that creaked every time I moved, looking at a damp stain on the ceiling that looked like a grey cloud. But that was only the beginning. The next day, the orders started. Stella, can you make breakfast? My mum likes her coffee strong and her eggs runny. Stella, wash this. My mum used your good plates. Stella, keep it down. My mum is resting. My mum, my mum, my mum. As if I wasn't anyone's mother. As if this wasn't my house. Mrs. Selina used my things without asking for permission. One day I saw her wearing my favourite robe, the one with the little blue flowers that Arthur gave me for our last anniversary. "Oh, I was cold and it was in the closet," she said when she saw me looking at her. She didn't even apologize. Vanessa redecorated without consulting me. One day I came home and they had taken down the curtains I had sewn myself. "They just looked so outdated, honey. Look how beautiful these white ones are." White, cold, soulless, like everything she touched. Ryan became a ghost. He left early, came home late. When I tried to talk to him, he would look for any excuse to leave. "I have work, Mum. We'll talk later." But that later never came. One afternoon, I dared to ask him if we could talk alone. I caught him in the garage as he was getting into his car. "Son, I need you to listen to me." "Not now, Mum." He cut me off without turning around. "Vanessa and I have an important dinner. Later, okay?" I stood there, with the dust from his car's exhaust sticking to my face, watching him drive away. My only son, the boy I carried for 9 months, who I raised alone when Arthur worked from sunup to sundown, who I nursed through every fever, who I hugged through every nightmare. That boy now couldn't even look me in the eye. The weeks passed and I became the servant in my own house. I washed, cooked, and cleaned Mrs. T. Selina left her clothes on the bathroom floor for me to pick up. Vanessa asked me to iron her blouses because, "You do it better, honey." And I obeyed. Like a fool, I obeyed. Until that night. The night everything broke. Vanessa had invited her friends over. Fake laughter filled the living room as they drank wine from the fancy glasses that Arthur and I bought for special occasions. I was in the kitchen preparing snacks when I heard my name. "What about your mother-in-law?" one of them asked. "Oh, she's in her room," Vanessa replied with a tone that chilled me. "Ryan and I decided to give her the guest room so she could have her own space. It's better that way. At her age, she needs something simpler, right? Besides, my mum needs special care." Laughter. They all laughed. I felt something inside me harden. It wasn't sadness. It was something colder, sharper. That night, while they were still partying in my living room, drinking my wine, using my things, I opened the drawer of the old nightstand in the guest room. There, under some sheets that no one used, was the metal box where Arthur kept important documents. I hadn't opened it in years. But that night, with my hands trembling with rage and pain, I lifted the rusted lid. And I found something that would change everything. Something they never imagined existed. The days became a silent torture. Every morning I would wake up to the sound of Mrs. Selina moving furniture in what was my bedroom, arranging things to her liking, erasing any trace that I had ever slept there. I would get up before everyone else to make breakfast. Strong coffee just the way Mrs. Selina liked it, sweet pastries from the bakery on the corner, cut fruit that I sliced with hands that never stopped trembling. And when they came downstairs, neither of them said good morning to me. They just sat, waiting for me to serve them. "The coffee is cold," Mrs. Selina would say without looking up from her phone. "I'll heat it up right away," I would reply, swallowing the humiliation. Vanessa would look at me with that smile that no longer tried to hide her contempt. "Honey, make sure you wash the dishes well later, okay? They had grease on them yesterday." The same dishes I had washed for 30 years without anyone complaining. Ryan would rush down, pour coffee into a thermos, and leave almost running. He didn't even eat at home anymore. I think he couldn't stand to see what was happening. Or maybe he could stand it, and that was worse. One afternoon, Mrs. Selina came into the kitchen while I was peeling potatoes. She poured herself a glass of water from the dispenser and looked me up and down. "You know, Stella, Vanessa tells me this house needs repairs. The roof, the pipes. She says it's going to cost about $200,000 to fix everything." My heart stopped. $200,000? I didn't even have 20,000 saved. "Of course," she continued while painting her nails at my kitchen table. "Ryan and Vanessa are thinking about making improvements, modernizing. Maybe they'll even sell it and buy something newer. Something where we all have our own space." She looked at me with those cold eyes. "You understand, right? At your age, you need something more comfortable. A nice nursing home. I've seen some in a great part of town that are beautiful." The words hit me like buckets of ice water. Nursing home. They wanted to send me to a nursing home. I didn't say anything. I just kept peeling potatoes while tears slid silently down my cheeks, falling onto the peels. But the worst came a week later. I had woken up with a fever. My whole body ached as if I had been beaten. I dragged myself to the living room where Vanessa was looking at her phone. "Vanessa," I said in a hoarse voice, "I feel really bad. Do you think I could go back to my room just for tonight? The guest room is very cold and—" "Oh, Stella," she interrupted me without taking her eyes off the screen. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a cold. Drink some tea and rest. My mum needs that room. We already explained it to you. She has serious health problems." She looked up, annoyed. "Besides, we're all settled. You can't be changing everything for a sneeze." That night they had company. Some friends of Vanessa's came over for dinner. I stayed in the guest room, shivering under a thin blanket, listening to the laughter coming from the dining room. At some point in the night, my fever got so high that I started to feel confused. I went out looking for water and found them all in the living room. Mrs. Selina was telling a story, wineglass in hand, sitting on my sofa. "Oh, sometimes old people just get stubborn," she said between laughs. "My friend had to put her mother-in-law in a nursing home because she couldn't stand her anymore. The lady thought the house was still hers. Can you imagine?" Everyone laughed. "Vanessa, too?" They saw me standing at the entrance to the hallway, dishevelled, wrapped in my old robe, trembling with fever. The silence became thick. "Do you need something, Stella?" Vanessa asked in that tone you use when a stray dog wanders into your yard. "Just water," I whispered. "It's in the kitchen," she replied, turning her face back to her guests. I went back to my room without the water. I lay down on that mattress that smelled of being forgotten and closed my eyes tight, trying not to listen to the laughter that filtered through the walls. But in that moment, in the middle of the fever and the humiliation, I remembered something. The papers. The papers I had found in Arthur's metal box. The next day, even though my body still ached, I waited for Vanessa and Mrs. Selina to go shopping. I took out the documents and read them again, slowly, word for word. And then I saw it clearly. The deed to the house was in Arthur and my name in co-ownership. But there was a clause that I had forgotten. Life estate in my favour. That meant that as long as I was alive, I was the sole owner. Ryan would inherit, yes, but only after my death. Vanessa didn't know it. Ryan had forgotten it. Or maybe he never really knew. I took out my old phone, the one I hardly ever used, and looked for a name I hadn't called in years. Lucy, my niece, my sister's daughter, a lawyer. I sent her a shaky message. "Lucy, I need your help. It's urgent. she replied in less than 5 minutes. Tell me where you are. I'm on my way. That afternoon, while Vanessa and Mrs. Selina were returning loaded with shopping bags they had bought with Ryan's money, I was sitting in the guest room with Lucy, showing her the documents. Her eyes widened. Then they filled with rage. Auntie, she said, squeezing my hand, do you know what this means? I shook my head, not daring to hope. It means you are the legal owner of this house, and no one can kick you out of here. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. What do I do? I asked, my voice cracking. Lucy looked at me with that determination I had known since she was a little girl. We're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. And then we started to plan. Lucy stayed with me that afternoon until it got dark. We went over every paper, every signature, every date. She explained to me with the patience of a teacher what each clause meant, every legal term that I had never fully understood. Look, Auntie, she said, pointing to a paragraph in the deed. It says clearly here, lifetime and non-transferable life estate. That means that as long as you live, this house is yours. Ryan is the heir, yes, but he can't dispose of anything until you're gone, and no one, listen to me, no one can force you to leave. The tears came without permission, not from sadness, it was something else. It was as if a light had turned on after months of total darkness. But they said they were going to sell it, that they need to make expensive repairs, that they can't. Lucy interrupted me firmly. Not without your authorization. And if they try to pressure you or trick you into signing something, that's fraud. We could even send them to jail. She squeezed my hands in hers. Auntie, do you understand? You have all the power here. The thing is, they thought you were just an ignorant old woman who didn't know how to defend herself. I was silent, processing everything. 30 years building this house, 5 years a widow, months enduring humiliation. And it turns out I always had the keys to the kingdom in my hands. What do I do now? I asked, feeling a mixture of fear and something like vengeance beginning to boil in my chest. Lucy smiled. It wasn't a sweet smile. It was a warrior's smile. Now, my dear aunt, we're going to remind them who the owner of this house is. The next few days were the strangest of my life. Everything was still the same. Waking up early, making breakfast, cleaning, obeying orders. But something had changed inside me. I no longer trembled when Mrs. Selina spoke to me in that tone of an offended queen. I no longer bowed my head when Vanessa ordered me around as if I were her servant, because now I knew something she didn't know, and that secret made me stronger every day. One afternoon, while I was pretending to mop the hallway, I heard them talking in the living room. Vanessa had the phone on speaker. Yes, Mum, she was saying in that excited little tone. The notary says that if she signs here and here, we can do the transfer in less than a month. Ryan is already on board. My blood ran cold. A transfer? What were they talking about? And what if the old woman doesn't want to sign, Bear? Monsieur, Selina asked. Vanessa let out a little laugh. Please. At her age, she'll sign. We'll tell her it's property tax papers or something. Besides, she's been so depressed lately that she won't put up a fight. Trust me, in 2 weeks this house will have a new owner. A new owner. Her. Vanessa wanted to steal my house. I kept mopping as if I hadn't heard anything, but my hands were gripping the mop handle so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I finished cleaning and went to the guest room. I closed the door. I took out my phone. I sent a message to Lucy. I need to see you urgently. They're planning something. That same night, Lucy arrived disguised as a friend who had come to visit me. Vanessa greeted her with suspicion from the living room, but didn't say anything. We locked ourselves in the guest room. I told her everything I had heard. Lucy took out her laptop and started looking things up while I sat trembling on the edge of the mattress. "Auntie, this is more serious than I thought," she said after several minutes. "If they trick you into signing something, it's a property fraud. But we need proof." She looked at me intently. "Could you record them when they talk about this?" My heart was beating so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. "How do I record them?" "With your phone. Just leave it recording when they're talking. We need them to state their intentions clearly." The next 3 days were pure agony. I carried my phone in my apron pocket all the time, waiting for the right moment. But Vanessa and Mrs. Selina had stopped talking about it when I was around, as if they had a feeling, until that Friday afternoon. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when I heard Vanessa get a call. "Ah, I'm glad you called, Mr. Mendoza. Yes, we have everything ready." With trembling hands, I took out my phone, activated the recorder, and left it on the kitchen counter, hidden behind the fruit bowl. I continued chopping slowly, making as little noise as possible. "Exactly," Vanessa continued, pacing around the living room. "The property is valued at $3,200,000. But we want to do the ownership transfer before the end of the month. The old lady is elderly. She has memory problems. No one will question anything." Memory problems? I, who still remembered every dollar I saved, every brick I laid, every promise they made to me. "My husband is the direct heir," Vanessa continued, "but we prefer to expedite the process. After all, at her age, well, you understand. We need the papers ready for Tuesday. She'll sign whatever they put in front of her." Mrs. Selina, from the sofa, added in a loud voice, "And after this is in Vanessa's name. We'll send her to a nursing home right away. She can't keep getting in the way here. I already found one in the city that costs $12,000 a month. With that, we'll get her out of the way." I was paralyzed. $12,000 a month. My pension barely reached $4,000. The conversation continued for a few more minutes. When Vanessa hung up, I was still chopping vegetables with tears falling onto the wooden cutting board. But this time, they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of pure rage. That night, I sent the recording to Lucy. She responded in half an hour. "Auntie, we've got them with this. Now comes the best part." "What's that?" I asked her. "The part where we show them who really runs this house." And so my plan began. The plan that would turn everything around. The plan that would turn the humiliated servant into the queen I always was. But they still didn't know anything. They still thought I was the silly old woman who would sign any paper. How wrong they were. Lucy arrived the next day with a folder full of documents and that lawyer's look that knows every legal loophole that exists. We sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from my house because I no longer felt safe even talking in my own home. "Auntie, listen to me carefully," she said, while we ordered 2 coffees that I could barely afford. "What they are planning is a crime. Property fraud, breach of trust, possible extortion. With the recording you have, we could send them to jail." She paused. "But there's something better we can do." "What's that?" I asked, feeling hope and fear mixing in my stomach. "We can give them a taste of their own medicine, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I tell you." She opened the folder and showed me several papers. "Remember I told you that you have a life estate?" I nodded. "Well, that means more than I explained. It means you can decide who lives in that house and who doesn't. You can evict anyone who is taking advantage of you. Legally, they are your guests, and guests can leave whenever the owner decides." The words fell on me like rain after months of drought. I can kick them out?" "Not only can you, You should. Lucy took out more papers. I have everything prepared here. We're going to update your documents at the public registry. We're going to change the locks. We're going to notify Ryan that if he doesn't respect your authority, he's also out. Because, Auntie, this is no longer just about getting your room back. This is about getting your life back. I was silent, processing. All my life I had been the woman who put up with things, who forgave, who made herself small so as not to bother. And now this young woman, my niece, whom I helped raise when my sister was widowed, was telling me that I had power, that I always had it. What if Ryan gets mad? I whispered. My biggest fear is losing my son. Lucy squeezed my hand on the table. Auntie, you've already lost him. The Ryan you raised wouldn't let them treat you like this. The man who is in that house now is not your son. He's a puppet of Vanessa, and if he really loves you, he will wake up when he sees that his mum isn't a coward. Her eyes filled with tears. Auntie, my mum always said that you were the strongest woman she knew, that you built that house with your own hands. Where did that woman go? Tears rolled down my cheeks. She got tired, honey. She got tired of fighting. Well, it's time for her to rest by fighting for what's hers, not putting up with what's someone else's. That day, I returned home with a plan that scared me so much that my heart wouldn't stop pounding in my ears. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. The next few days, I acted like the same old Stella, submissive, quiet, obedient. Vanessa and Mrs. Selina were more relaxed than ever, believing they had already won everything. Stella, Vanessa told me on Monday morning, the notary is coming on Tuesday for you to sign some papers. It's for the property tax, routine. You just need to put your signature here and here. She showed me documents that she didn't even let me read properly. Don't worry about understanding. I'll explain everything. Okay, honey, I replied in a soft voice, bowing my head. Inside, my blood was boiling. That same afternoon, while they were out to lunch with some friends, Lucy arrived with a locksmith. In 2 hours, all the locks on the house were changed. The old keys no longer worked. The new ones were in my pocket. What if they come back early? I asked nervously while the locksmith worked. They won't, Lucy said, showing me her phone. I sent them a message from a private number saying they won a free spa treatment in the city. They'll be there until 8 o'clock at night. I couldn't help but smile. My niece had inherited her mother's intelligence. Then the notary came, the real one, Mr. Saldana, an elderly man with a white moustache, who had known Arthur for 30 years. Mrs. Stella, he said, after reviewing all the papers, are you sure about this? It's a strong decision. Mr. Saldana, I replied in a voice that I didn't recognize as my own, a firm voice that came from a deep place. I have been humiliated in my own home for months. They took my room, they treat me like a servant, and now they want to steal my life's savings. Yes, I'm sure. He nodded. Then let's proceed. I signed documents, many documents, updated deeds, residency confirmations, sworn declarations. Lucy explained each one as I signed with a trembling but determined hand. It's done, the notary said at the end. This was registered today. You are the sole owner with all the legal rights to dispose of your property as you see fit. When they left, I was left alone in the living room, in my living room. I looked around. The furniture that Vanessa had changed without permission, the walls she had painted that cold grey, the photos of her and Ryan where mine with Arthur used to be. I took out my phone and called Ryan. He answered on the third ring. Mum, I'm in a meeting. What's wrong? I need you to come home today. It's urgent. Mum, I can't. I have… Ryan, I interrupted him in a tone I hadn't used with him in years. I need you to come. It's about the house. It's important. There was a silence. Did something happen? Yes, son. Something happened. And I need to talk to you before your wife and your mother-in-law get back. Another pause. I'm on my way. I hung up. My hands were trembling, but my decision was firm, like the cement I had once mixed to build these walls. Ryan arrived an hour later. He tried to use his key, but the lock wouldn't turn. He rang the doorbell, confused. I opened the door. He looked at me, puzzled. Did you change the lock? Yes, I replied. I changed it. His confusion turned into worry. Mom, what's going on? Come in, son. We need to talk. I sat him down in the living room. I poured him a glass of water. I sat across from him and looked him straight in the eyes, looking for the boy who once hugged me when he was scared. Ryan, do you recognize me as your mother? Or am I just a nuisance that needs to be hidden in the guest room? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mum, don't start with, answer me. The silence stretched between us like an abyss. Of course you're my mother, he finally said, without conviction. Then why did you let them treat me like a servant in my own house? He lowered his head. He didn't have an answer, or he did, but he didn't dare say it. I showed him the documents. I showed him the recording of Vanessa talking to the fake notary. I showed him the papers that proved this house was mine. Not his, not Vanessa's, mine. I watched as his face went from confusion to surprise to horror. Mum, I didn't know that Vanessa… You didn't know? I interrupted him, and this time my voice didn't tremble. You didn't know that she sent me to the guest room? You didn't know that her mother uses my things as if they were hers? You didn't know that they talk to me as if I were the help? I thought it was temporary. It's been 3 months, Ryan. 3 months where you haven't looked me in the eye. 3 months where you chose her over me. Tears streamed down his face, but I had no more tears to give. Tomorrow, I told him with an icy calm, your wife and your mother-in-law are going to find a surprise, and you are going to have to choose. Either you're on my side or you're on theirs, but you can no longer be on both. Mum, please. I've already made my decision, son. Now it's your turn to make yours. He left with slumped shoulders, defeated, and I was left alone in my living room, preparing for the storm that would come the next day, because the next day, Vanessa and Mrs. Selina would meet the real Stella, the one who built this house, the one who wasn't going to let anyone take anything else from her. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting in the guest room, listening to every sound in the house, the living room clock ticking away the hours, the hum of the refrigerator, the crickets in the garden that Arthur planted with so much care. Every sound was a memory, a piece of my life that had become a battlefield. At 6 in the morning, I got up. I bathed slowly as if it were a ritual. I put on the navy blue dress I wore for important occasions, the one that Arthur said made me look elegant. I carefully did my hair. I put on the pearl earrings my mother left me. When I saw myself in the cracked mirror in the guest room's bathroom, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Dignity. I went downstairs to make breakfast as always, but this time it was different. Every movement had a different weight, because I knew something they didn't know, and that knowledge made me walk straighter. Mrs. Selina came down first, dragging her pink slippers down the hallway. She sat at the table without looking at me. Coffee, she ordered. Good morning, I replied calmly as I served her. She looked at me, surprised. It had been weeks since I had said good morning first. Vanessa came down half an hour later, all dolled up, with that perfect makeup she wore to feel superior. She had her laptop under her arm. "The notary arrives at 10, she told me as she sat down. "You have to be ready to sign. Comb your hair nicely and put on something decent, okay? We want to make a good impression." "Okay," I replied without emotion. She looked at me with suspicion. "Are you okay? You look weird." "I'm perfect." The silence that followed was strange, uncomfortable, as if Vanessa felt that something had changed but didn't know what. "And Ryan?" Mrs. Selina asked. "He left early," I lied. The truth was, he hadn't come home to sleep. I had sent him a message in the middle of the night. "Son, stay where you are. I'll explain everything tomorrow." The hours passed as slow as molasses. I moved around the house doing my usual chores, but Vanessa didn't take her eyes off me. She watched me as if keeping an eye on an animal that might bite. At 9:30, the doorbell rang. "It must be Mr. Mendoza," Vanessa said, excited, jumping up from the sofa. "Mum, come on, you have to see this." But when she opened the door, her smile froze. It wasn't Mr. Mendoza. It was Lucy, in her black business suit, briefcase in hand, and an expression that could cut glass. "Good morning," she said in a professional voice. "I am Ms. Lucy Salazar, attorney for Mrs. Stella Vargas, owner of this property. May we come in?" Behind her were two more people, the real notary, Mr. Saldana, and an officer from the district attorney's office. Vanessa's face went from confusion to panic in seconds. "What? I don't understand. We were waiting for—" "Mr. Mendoza," Lucy interrupted, walking in without permission. "I'm afraid Mr. Mendoza doesn't exist. Or rather, he exists. But he has never had any legal dealings with you. What you hired was a fraud." Mrs. Selina got up from the sofa, furious. "Who do you think you are, just walking into this house?" "I'm walking in because my client, the legal owner of this property, gave me authorization." Lucy looked for me with her eyes. I was standing next to the kitchen, my hands clasped together, feeling taller than I had been in months. "Right, Auntie?" "That's right," I said in a clear voice. Vanessa looked at me as if I had grown a second head. "Auntie? Your family?" "Stella is my aunt," Lucy replied, opening her briefcase on the living room table. "And here is Mr. Saldana, Notary Public number 47 of the state of Illinois, who has in his possession all the documents that prove that this house belongs solely and exclusively to my client." The notary took out a stack of papers. "Good morning. Indeed, I have come to notify you that Mrs. Stella Vargas is the sole owner of this property by virtue of a lifetime and non-transferable life estate established in a public deed before me on March 14th, 1918. Vanessa took a step back. "No, that can't be. Ryan inherited this house when his father died." "Ryan is the heir," Lucy cut her off. "But the inheritance only becomes effective after my aunt's death. As long as she is alive, this house is hers. He cannot sell it, transfer it, or dispose of it in any way." Mrs. Selina tried to regain control. "This is ridiculous. Ryan is her son. She won't—" "She'll do whatever she wants in her house," I said at last, taking a step forward. My voice didn't tremble, and I'm tired of being treated like garbage under my own roof. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred. You planned this. You stupid old woman. You think you can kick us out?" "I don't think so," I replied with a calm that surprised me. "I've already decided." Lucy took out more papers. "Also, we have this." She placed her phone on the table and pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room. The old lady is elderly, She has memory problems. No one will question anything. At her age, well, you understand. She'll sign whatever they put in front of her. Vanessa's face turned the color of wax. And this, Lucy continued, playing another recording. Mrs. Selina's voice. After this is in Vanessa's name, we'll send her to a nursing home right away. I already found one in the city that costs $12,000 a month. Mrs. Selina opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Property fraud, the district attorney's officer said, taking out a notebook. Attempted larceny, breach of trust. These are serious felonies, ladies. You could face up to 8 years in prison. Vanessa fell back into the sofa, pale. No, not us. It was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said, approaching her, looking down at her for the first time in months. It was a plan to steal what took me 30 years to build, to lock me up in a nursing home and forget about me, to erase me. Tears began to stream down her perfectly made-up cheeks, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. You have 2 options, Lucy continued. 1, my aunt files charges, and you face a criminal trial that could send you to jail. 2, you leave this house today in peace, and this is where it ends. Today? Mrs. Selina shrieked. Where are we going to go? That, I replied coldly, is not my problem. You were very clear about where you were going to send me. Vanessa looked at me with those eyes that once pretended to be full of affection. Ryan won't allow this. I'm his wife. Ryan, I interrupted, already knows everything. I showed him the recordings last night, and he'll have to decide if he wants to stay here, under my rules, or leave with you. At that moment, we heard a key in the door. Ryan walked in slowly, with the broken face of someone who hadn't slept all night. He looked at all of us. Mum, he said in a cracked voice. Son! Vanessa got up, running toward him. Honey, your mum's gone crazy. She's trying to kick us out. Tell her that... Ryan raised his hand, stopping her. For the first time in years, he stopped her. I already heard the recordings, he said, looking at her with a mixture of pain and rage. I already know what you were planning to do to my mum. But I did it for us, for our future. You did it for you. His voice was firm, a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. You wanted to rob my mum, lock her up, erase her. His voice broke, like I erased her for the last few months. He approached me with tears freely falling down his face. He knelt down, my son, my boy, on his knees in front of me. Mum, forgive me. I've been a coward. I've been the worst son in the world. I touched his head, like when he was a child and had nightmares. Get up, Ryan. You don't deserve. Get up. He stood up, trembling. Your father made me promise to take care of you, I said, wiping away a tear. But he also made me promise to never let anyone disrespect me. Not even you. I looked at him squarely. If you stay here, you're going to respect this house. You're going to respect me. And your wife has to go. Vanessa screamed. You can't do this to me. I'm his wife. You're a thief, I replied without turning to look at her. And thieves don't live in my house. Mrs. Selina tried one last play. We're going to sue. This is unfair. We're going to sue us, Lucy interrupted. With the evidence we have, you won't just lose. You'll be publicly humiliated. Do you want that? Silence was their answer. You have until 6 o'clock this afternoon to get your things out, I said finally. After that, I'm changing the locks, and anything left inside will be donated. Vanessa shot me a look of hatred that would have destroyed me months ago. Now it just slid right off me. This isn't going to end here, she hissed. It already has, I replied. Now get out of my house. And they left. They went upstairs, dragging their rage, their defeat, their humiliation, the same feelings I had carried for months in that guest room. Justice, I discovered that day, sometimes arrives late, but when it does, it knows exactly where to hurt. The next few hours were controlled chaos. Vanessa and Mrs. Selina went up and down the stairs like frantic ants, dragging suitcases, yelling at each other, blaming each other for the mess. Ryan stayed seated in the living room, his head in his hands, crying silently. I stood firm in my spot by the kitchen, with Lucy by my side like a guardian. The district attorney's officer also stayed, making sure everything went smoothly and that they didn't take anything that didn't belong to them. "Ryan gave this to me," Vanessa yelled, coming down with an expensive lamp they had bought 2 months ago. "It stays," I said without emotion. "Everything that was bought with money from this house stays in this house." She shot me a killer look, but left the lamp on the floor with a thud that almost broke it. Mrs. Selina came down, carrying a suitcase full of clothes. When she passed by me, she stopped. "You're an ungrateful woman," she spat the words at me. "Vanessa only wanted to help you, to give you a more comfortable place, and this is how you repay her." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Mom, you slept in my bed for 3 months. You used my things. You treated me like a servant in my own house, and now you call me ungrateful." I took a step closer. "Leave before I change my mind and file the charges." She clenched her jaw and walked out, dragging her rolling suitcase that sounded like the cry of a wounded animal. Vanessa made several trips. On each one, her face showed more fury. On one of those trips, she approached Ryan, who was still sitting like a statue in the living room. "Aren't you going to do anything?" she demanded. "Are you going to let your mum kick me out like I'm trash?" Ryan lifted his head. His eyes were red and swollen. "How did you treat her?" "I was trying to help." "You were trying to steal," he said in a tired voice. "You were trying to lock her up in a nursing home. You were trying to erase her from her own life." His voice broke. "And me, I let you do it." "Ryan, please don't do this. We're a team." "You and I were never a team," he interrupted her. "I was your puppet, your way of getting this house," he said, gesturing around. "But neither you nor I deserve to be here. This house belongs to my mum, and it's going to stay that way until she decides otherwise." Vanessa opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. For the first time since I met her, she was speechless, without manipulation, without weapons. She went to finish packing in silence. It was 5:30 in the afternoon when they came down for the last time. Vanessa had 4 huge suitcases. Mrs. Selina had 3 more. They looked ridiculous. 2 women loaded with luggage at the door of a house that was never theirs. "Where are you going to go?" Ryan asked with genuine concern. "To a hotel," Vanessa replied dryly, "until we find an apartment." She looked at him with tears of rage. "Are you coming with us, or are you staying with her?" The silence thickened like hot tar. Ryan looked at me. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to decide for him. That was his choice, his moment to be the man his father had tried to raise. "I'm staying," he finally said. "But not here. I'm going to rent a place. I need to think. I need to fix this." He looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mum, can I come visit you?" The tears I had held back all afternoon finally escaped. "Always, son." Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, how sweet. The happy family. I hope you enjoy living alone in this old house, Stella. I hope it was worth losing your daughter-in-law and your grandchild." Those words froze me. "Grandchild?" She smiled maliciously. "Yes, I'm 2 months pregnant. I was going to tell you after you signed the papers, as a gift. But now your grandchild is going to grow up without knowing you, without knowing he had a grandmother who preferred an empty house to her family. The blow was brutal. A grandchild, my son's child. Ryan looked just as surprised as I did. Pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? Because it was my trump card, Vanessa replied. But it doesn't matter anymore. Let's go, Mum. They walked toward the door. Mrs. Selina went out first. Vanessa stopped on the threshold and gave me one last look. Are you going to regret this? No, I replied with a calm I didn't know I had. I regret letting you treat me the way you did. But this, getting my dignity back, never. She left, slamming the door so hard it made the walls tremble. The silence that followed was strange. It wasn't peace. It was the silence after an explosion, when the smoke still hasn't cleared and you don't know what's left standing. Lucy was the first to speak. Auntie, you were incredible. Ryan slowly approached. Mum, about the baby. I didn't know. I know, son. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure my grandchild knows you. I promise. Don't make promises you don't know if you can keep, I told him, touching his cheek. Just be a good father, better than you were a son these past few months. He nodded. He said goodbye with a long hug that broke and remade me at the same time. And he left. Lucy, the notary, and the officer stayed a little longer, making sure everything was in order, that the documents were signed, that the new locks worked. When they finally left, it was almost 8 o'clock at night, and for the first time in 3 months, I was alone in my house. Completely alone. I walked slowly through each room, the living room without Mrs. Selina's mess, the kitchen without Vanessa's orders, the hallway without their whispers. I went up the stairs on shaky legs. I opened the door to my room. Everything was a mess. The bed wasn't made. Mrs. Selina's clothes were thrown on the floor. The closet was open, showing the disaster they had left. But it was mine again. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. The photo of Arthur on the nightstand was still there, covered in dust. I picked it up and wiped it with the sleeve of my dress. I did it, old man, I whispered to the photo. I got our house back. And then, for the first time in a long time, I cried. But not from sadness, not from defeat. I cried from relief, from freedom, from knowing that the roots we planted 30 years ago were still strong, that no one had torn me out, that I was still standing. That night I slept in my bed, in my room, with the photo of Arthur on the nightstand, with my blankets that smelled of time and memory, and for the first time in months I slept in peace, because the true owner of the house had returned, and that owner was me. The next few days were strange. The house felt too big, too quiet. Every morning I would wake up expecting to hear Vanessa's orders or Mrs. Selina's complaints. But there was only silence. A silence that at first was scary, but that little by little turned into peace. Ryan kept his word, halfway. He rented a small apartment in the city and came to visit me every 3 days. He would bring food, flowers, and apologies that he repeated like a litany. But there was something broken between us that couldn't be fixed with tacos or bouquets of carnations. What about Vanessa? I asked one afternoon while we were eating at the kitchen table. He stirred his food without appetite. She's with her mum in an apartment in a neighborhood nearby. She says she doesn't want anything to do with me until I come back home with you. This isn't your home, son. Not while I'm alive. He looked at me hurt. Mum, I know I made a mistake. It's not about making a mistake, I interrupted him, putting down my fork. It's about you choosing. For months you saw me suffer, and you chose to stay quiet. And now your wife is using my grandchild as a weapon. I felt the lump in my throat, but I didn't let the tears fall. So you decide, Ryan. You decide if you're going to be the man your father dreamed you would be, or if you're going to continue to be the puppet of someone who only wants you for what you can give her. He left that afternoon quieter than ever. A week later, Lucy came with news. Auntie, Vanessa filed a lawsuit. My blood ran cold. What kind of lawsuit? She says you kicked her out illegally, that she has rights as your son's wife, that the baby needs stability. Lucy put the papers on the table. It's all legal theatre. It has no basis, but it's going to be annoying. What do I do? Nothing. I'll handle it. I just need you to sign this to officially represent you. She took out more documents. And Auntie, one more thing. What is it? I did a little research. Vanessa has done this before. My heart stopped. What do you mean before? Lucy opened her laptop and showed me a file. She had another marriage 6 years ago, with a man from out of state, a widower, who owned 2 businesses. She married him, convinced his children that their dad was getting senile and tried to take everything. The children sued, they won, and she left with nothing. She looked at me intently. Vanessa is a professional gold digger. Ryan was just her next target. The rage rose from my stomach to my throat like bitter bile. Does Ryan know this? Now he did. The next day, Ryan appeared at my door. He was carrying a suitcase. Can I stay here? He asked in the voice of a lost boy. Not in my old room, in the guest room, where you slept because of me. Tears were streaming down his face. I need to feel what you felt. I need to understand. I hugged him in the doorway, my broken son, my son who was finally waking up. You can stay, but with conditions. Whatever they are. You're going to go to therapy. You're going to look for a job doing something that makes you happy, not what Vanessa wanted. And you're going to learn to be the father your son needs, not the one Vanessa wants you to be. Yes, Mum. Yes to all of it. That night, Ryan slept in the guest room. I listened to him cry through the thin walls, and even though it hurt, I knew it was necessary. Pain is the best teacher when we are ready to learn. 2 weeks later, the court summons arrived. Vanessa had escalated the lawsuit. Now she was asking for child support, spousal support for the baby, and she wanted me to be declared mentally unfit to live alone because of my age. She wants to commit you, Lucy said, reading the papers with rage. She says you have mental problems, that you can't take care of yourself, that the judge should appoint a guardian. And guess who's offering to be the guardian? Her. Exactly. The hearing was 3 weeks later in a family court downtown. I arrived with Lucy, with Ryan, and with something Vanessa wasn't expecting. 3 lifelong neighbours who came to testify, Mrs. Lupita, who had lived on the corner for 40 years, Mr. Memo from the newsstand, Mrs. Chayo, who used to buy baked goods from me. They all declared the same thing, that I was perfectly sane, that I took care of my house better than many young people, that Vanessa was the one who had come in like an invader. When it was Vanessa's turn, she arrived dressed in black, with dark glasses, touching her belly every 2 minutes as if to remind everyone that she was pregnant. Your Honour, she said in a trembling voice, I just want what's best for my family. My mother-in-law is an elderly woman who needs care. The house is in disrepair. My husband and I just wanted to help. Help by locking her in the guest room? The judge asked, looking at the file. Vanessa stammered. It was temporary. Help by trying to steal her property with fraudulent documents, the judge insisted. That was a misunderstanding. Help by planning to put her in a nursing home against her will. Silence. Then Lucy presented the recordings. The judge listened to them in full. His face went from neutral to indignant as Vanessa's voice filled the room. She'll sign whatever they put in front of her. We'll send her to a nursing home right away. When it was over, the judge took off his glasses and looked at Vanessa with disgust. Ma'am, in my 30 years as a family court judge, I have seen many cases of abuse. But this, he shook his head. This is the lowest I have ever seen. Taking advantage of an elderly person in her own home, trying to dispossess her of her property, and now coming here to play the victim. But, Your Honor, the baby is no excuse for committing fraud, the judge cut her off. Motion denied on all counts. Mrs. Stella Vargas is in full possession of her mental faculties and has every right to live on her property as she sees fit. He banged his gavel. Furthermore, it is hereby established that you, Mrs. Vanessa, are forbidden from coming within 200 yards of Mrs. Vargas's property. If you do, you will be arrested for harassment. Vanessa got up, screaming. This is unfair. She took my husband away from me. You took yourself away, the judge replied coldly, when you decided to be a criminal. Get out before I hold you in contempt of court. She left the courtroom like a wounded animal, dragging her defeat. Mrs. Selina followed, muttering curses that no one heard. Outside the courthouse, Ryan hugged me tightly. It's over, Mum. It's over. But I knew it wasn't completely over. Something else was missing. That night, alone in my house, I dialed Vanessa's number. She answered on the third ring. What do you want? Her voice was pure venom. I want you to know something, I said calmly. I don't hate you. I pity you. Pity? Me? Yes, because you go through life stealing from others instead of building your own. Because you use people and throw them away when they are no longer useful. Because now you are expecting a son, and instead of thinking about being a good mother, you're still thinking about how to get revenge. I paused. My grandchild is going to need more than you can give him. He's going to need values, dignity, honesty, and if you don't give them to him, I'm going to be here to give them. You're never going to know my son. You don't get to decide that alone. Ryan has rights, and when that boy grows up and asks about his grandmother, you're going to have to explain to him why you tried to steal an old woman's own house. My throat hurt, but I continued. You're going to have to tell him that his mum is a thief, and that's going to be your punishment, Vanessa. Not jail, not losing the lawsuit. Your punishment is going to be living with the knowledge that your son will discover who you really are. She hung up without answering, but I knew the words had gone in, like nails, like the truth that hurts where it needs to hurt. Days later, Lucy told me that Vanessa and Mrs. Selina had moved to a town a few hours away. Ryan was still trying to talk to her about the baby, but she wasn't answering. Give it time, I advised my son. Rage gets tired, and when that boy is born, she's going to need support. And you're going to be there, not as her puppet, but as the father your son deserves. He nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I saw in his eyes the boy I had raised, the man his father dreamed he would be. Justice, I learned, is not always fast, but when it arrives, it knows exactly where to hit so that it hurts in the right place. 4 months passed since that day in court, 4 months in which I learned something I never imagined, that solitude can be a blessing when it's chosen, not imposed. My house was mine again, not just on paper, but in my soul. The first thing I did was take out everything Vanessa had brought in, the cold and white furniture she bought. The grey curtains that looked like they belonged in a hospital, the modern paintings that meant nothing. I donated everything to a homeless shelter. Someone else could use it. I wanted to get my home back, not the showroom she had built. Ryan helped me paint the walls. We returned them to the peach colour that Arthur and I had chosen so many years ago. We hung up the photos of our wedding again, of Ryan as a baby, of birthdays in the backyard. The house began to breathe again. One afternoon, while we were hanging up the old curtains that I had sewn, the ones I found stored in a box in the basement, Ryan stopped. "Mum, I have to tell you something." The tone scared me. "What happened?" "Vanessa had the baby 2 weeks ago." My breath caught. "And why didn't you tell me?" "Because she wouldn't let me be there for the birth. I found out later." His voice cracked. "It's a boy. His name is Arthur, like my dad." Tears came without permission. My grandchild had my husband's name. "Have you seen him?" "Once. She let me go to the hospital for only 10 minutes. She said if I wanted to know him better, I had to get back together with her." He looked at me with pleading eyes. "But Mum, I can't. I can't go back to someone who hurt you so much, who tried to steal from you, who—" "Ryan," I interrupted him, taking his hands. "That boy is your son, and he's my grandchild. No matter what Vanessa has done, that baby is not to blame for anything. So what do I do? Fight for him, not for her. For him. Go for shared custody. Fight for your rights as a father. And when you have that child in your arms, bring him here, to meet his grandmother, to see the house that his great-grandfather built." I wiped away a tear. That boy is going to grow up knowing where he comes from, knowing that his family doesn't give up, knowing that dignity is not negotiable. Ryan nodded, hugging me tightly. 2 months later, thanks to Lucy, who took on the legal case, Ryan obtained shared custody. Every weekend, my son would bring my grandson home. The first time I held him in my arms, I looked into those black eyes that were identical to Arthur's and felt that the circle had closed, that all the pain had been worth it for this moment. "Look, little Arthur," I whispered to him as I rocked him in the living room. "This house was built by your great-grandfather with his own hands, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And one day when you're older, I'm going to tell you the story of how your grandmother had to fight so that no one could take it from us." Ryan was watching me from the kitchen door, with that sad smile of someone who is learning to forgive himself. Vanessa never came back. I knew from Lucy that she had met another man, a businessman from out of state, and was already doing the same thing, settling in, suggesting changes, taking control. Some people never learn, or they learn, but choose not to change. Ryan continued to live in his apartment in the city, but he came to eat at my house every Wednesday and Sunday. He was no longer the perfect son I had before Vanessa. He was something better, a real son, with scars, with guilt, but also with the humility to acknowledge them. "Mum," he told me one Sunday while we were washing dishes together, "thank you for not giving up, for fighting. If you hadn't, I would still be a coward." "You weren't a coward, son. You were human. Humans make mistakes, but you didn't make a mistake." I looked him in the eyes. Of course I made a mistake. I made a mistake by allowing them to treat me like that for so long, by believing that putting up with it was love, by thinking that making myself small would make others happy. I dried a plate slowly. "But I learned something, Ryan. I learned that there's a difference between being a good person and being a fool, and I was in the second group for too long." One afternoon, I was watering the plants in the garden when Mrs. Lupita, my neighbor, looked over the fence. "Stella, can I come over?" "Of course, Mrs. Lupita." She sat on the chair I have under the lemon tree. She looked at me with those eyes that have seen too many neighborhood stories. "Stella, everyone in the neighborhood knows what happened, and I want you to know that all the women are proud of you." "Proud?" "Yes, honey, because you did what many don't dare to. You set boundaries. You didn't let them. And that, at our age, when we've been taught all our lives to put up with things and keep quiet." She shook her head. "That's brave." I dried my hands on my apron, feeling the tears threaten again. "I didn't feel brave, Mrs. Lupita. I felt alone, scared." "That's exactly what being brave is, honey. Being scared and doing it anyway." That night, alone in my room, with my bed, with the photo of Arthur on the nightstand, I took out an old notebook I found in a drawer. It was from when Arthur was alive. On the first page, in his crooked handwriting, he had written, "Ideas for when we get old." I read the list with a tight heart. Travel to the coast to see the ocean. Plant more trees in the garden. Buy a rocking chair for Stella. Teach our grandson how to make kites. Dance a waltz on Sundays in the park. Almost all of them remained unfulfilled. Arthur left too soon, but now, with the house recovered, with my grandson visiting me every weekend, with my son learning to be the man he should be, I felt that there was still time for some. I closed the notebook and put it away next to the photo. "I got the house back, old man," I said to the photo like I do every night. "I got my life back. Now I'm going to live the time I have left the way you would have wanted, with dignity, with joy, without letting anyone push me around." And that's how this story ends, or rather, how it begins again. Because I learned that it's never too late to reclaim what is yours. I'm not just talking about houses or properties. I'm talking about your dignity, your peace, your right to live without humiliation. For months, I believed that being good meant putting up with things, that being a good mother meant accepting anything just to not lose my son. I was wrong. Being good is knowing when to say enough. It's defending what you worked so hard to build. It's teaching others, with actions, not with words, that respect is not negotiable. Vanessa is still out there, looking for her next victim. Mrs. Selina is probably helping her with her plans, but that's no longer my problem. My problem now is deciding whether to paint the guest room blue or yellow for when little Arthur comes to sleep over. My problem is learning to use the new phone that Ryan gave me to take pictures of my grandson. My problem is remembering to water the plants I planted last week in the garden. Beautiful problems. Problems of someone who is alive, who is in her house, who got her throne back not by screaming, not by fighting like a madwoman, but by showing the cards she always had in her hand. I built this house brick by brick, and I almost lost it lie by lie. But lies fall down on their own when the truth has signed papers, witnesses who speak, and a woman who got tired of bowing her head. If you're listening to this story and you feel a connection, if someone in your life is making you feel small in your own house, in your own life, let me tell you something. It's not too late. It's never too late to remember who you are. It's never too late to stand firm and say, enough. It's never too late to reclaim what belongs to you. Because true wealth is not in what you possess. It's in what you don't allow to be taken from you. And I, Stella Vargas, widow of Arthur, at 67 years old, baked goods seller, builder of houses and dreams, I tell you that if I could do it, you can too. Sleep in your bed, live in your house, get your life back, because you deserve a happy ending, and happy endings aren't given to you. You build them brick by brick, decision by decision, just like I built this house, just like I got it back. And you, have you ever had to fight for what's yours? Have you ever felt that you no longer call the shots in your own home? Tell me in the comments, right where you are listening to us from. I love knowing that these stories reach everywhere, to all the hearts that need to know they are not alone. If this story touched your soul, if it made you feel that you can be strong when you need to be, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We continue to share real-life stories here of women like you and me who learned not to give up, because at the end of the day, the best revenge is not hatred, it's living well, it's sleeping in peace, it's knowing that you did the right thing even if it hurt. I'll see you in the next story. And remember, your house, your life, your rules, because true power doesn't come from yelling, it comes from knowing when to show the cards you always had in your hand.